The most developed part of Croatia in terms of tourism by far is Istria. It's a peninsula on the border with Slovenia. It used to be Italian, and there are only 200,000 people there, but it's between 35 and 40% of Croatian tourism in general. And here are 25 reasons that I think you should never visit. The first one is that they have no idea what language to speak. This is a region that has been under control of various different people over the years, Italians, Austro-Hungarians, Croatian, and as a result people have a very, very, very diverse language base. It's the only bilingual region in Croatia, and everybody speaks very good English, and because of so many German tourists over the years, German as well. And they also have some quite interesting dialects, such as I heard the other day Istro Veneto, which is an Italian dialect which is also understood in Venice, but it's spoken as a main language by some people in Istria. So if you're coming to Istria, you will have absolutely no problem being understood. Second reason never to come to it is that the dogs never look up. They're always looking at the ground. It's very strange. If you go in the forests around Motovun, you will find one of the premier truffle hunting places in Europe. This became very famous back in 1999 when a local Giancarlo Zigante was walking with his truffle hunting dog Diana, and they unearthed a truffle which was 1.31 kilos. This is now in the Guinness Book of Records as the biggest truffle ever found. And overnight, Istria became known as a very, very, very important truffle destination. Since then, Istrian gastronomy has really, really pushed forward, and truffles are a very, very major part of that gastronomy story. And if you come to the Motovun forest, there are many, many truffle hunting tours and stuff. It's a very, very interesting thing for all the family. And afterwards, you come and you try all the truffles that you've hunted with a selection of dishes. It's fantastic. Number 3, the buildings are falling down. This is a region of incredible heritage, dating back thousands and thousands of years. And if you go to Pula, the best example of Roman heritage in this region is the Pula Arena, the amphitheatre. It's the 6th biggest amphitheatre still in existence, and it dominates the skyline. But this is an example of just how much heritage and tradition you have here. It's a fantastic region for that. Number 4, they have the most bizarre beliefs in fertility. So if you go to the village of Graščica, they have a parish church there which is full of nails in the door, and this is because there was a belief or a legend that if you banged a nail into the door it would help you get pregnant. It was then explained to local people that it only worked if you actually banged a nail into the door with your hand, and so that was quite a bit painful and stuff. So that's one of the bizarre things that you can see. Little things in history, you have all these different traditions, it's quite strange. Number 5, they bathe in anything. Last week I was in Istria and I had my first ever beer spa, and I got into a bath full of beer, and this was a wellness treatment at the fantastic San Servolo brewery in Buje. This is a brewery which is now dominating the craft beer scene in Croatia, and they've expanded from just having a brewery to a restaurant, a hotel, wellness centre and so on. It's a fantastic place, totally on its own. The beer's amazing, and this is just one example of a small business in Istria which is using the local area and is doing a fantastic job. If you come in Istria, you should take very good care to keep a close eye on your loved one, because this is a very romantic region. There was a chap called Casanova a few years ago, and he spent a lot of time in Istria. He came to places like Bale and to Vrsar. He was very famous for stealing the ladies, and you can understand why. It was such a beautiful place and it's such a romantic setting. So take care of your loved one when you come to Istria. And there is even a Casanova Fest every year in Vrsar. One of the worst things about Istria, if you're a golfer, is that the golf courses, PGA golf courses, only have 300 degrees sea view. I mean, how terrible is that? So there is a wonderful golf course just outside Savudrija, the Kempinski Adriatic, which has just been given the license to be the first PGA golf course in this region. And it's open 12 months a year. There are a few golf courses in Slovenia where you can also combine your holiday and golf there, but this is the only one that's open 12 months a year. It's the only PGA golf course, and in 2024 it will start hosting the first ever Croatian PGA golf tournaments. Number 8, some of the villages in Istria inland are absolute war zones. If you go to the village of Vižanada back in 1969-1970, this was the film set for one of the great iconic war movies of all time, Kelly's Heroes, which had Telly Savalas and Kiefer Sutherland and others in there. They took over the whole village and it became an amazing film set. But perhaps even more interestingly, back in 2017, there was a complete airsoft reenactment of the whole movie by some enthusiasts. So they had like 90 soldiers. Everywhere you go in Istria, there's a different story, there's a different tradition. Everything's just a little bit low-key, but it's a really fascinating place to go and travel around. Number 9, they have towns which combine unicorns and ancient mummies. If you go to the town of Vodňan in the Church of St. Blaise, you will find an incredible collection of about 700 sacral relics, including the bones and stuff of saints, dating between the 5th and 19th century. And it's quite an unusual thing to see, certainly in Croatia. But if you go to the end of town, you'll see a nice smart new building called Infobip. And this is an IT company of 3 guys from Vodňan who became the first unicorn, the first billion-dollar company in Croatia. And they decided that they wanted to stay with their headquarters. You have this wonderful historic town, and then you have this wonderful company moving forward, like conquering the globe. Number 10, unless you're very small, you won't fit into the towns in Istria, because Istria has officially the smallest town in the world. It's called Hum, and it measures 100 meters by 30 meters, and it has a total population of 30. The legend has it that giants used to build all the hilltop towns in Istria, and they would move from hilltop to hilltop to hilltop, and when they came to Hum, they ran out of stones, and so there was only a little bit left, and this is why we have the smallest town in the world. One of the big problems of coming to Istria is you won't be able to hear the traffic, because here is the home of the quietest rally in the world. Every year they have the Nikola Tesla electric vehicle rally, which starts from Rovinj and spends 3 or 4 days in Istria before going to the rest of Croatia. And this is a rally just for electric cars, normally just Teslas. And in 2016, the mother of Elon Musk was on the rally as well. And we've also had the Mate Rimac Concept 1 was on this rally. It's a fantastic event showcasing the very, very best of Croatian gastronomy, nature, and the offer for the electric cars. Number 12, here in Istria we had vampires just as scary as Dracula. So back in 1656 in the village of Kringa near Tinjan, there was a vampire called Jure Grando. He terrorized the local community. After he died, he used to go and visit all the villagers. He did this for 16 years until one day the villagers came with a stake through his heart, and when they went into the coffin, he was there looking at them smiling, and they ran away. And eventually he was beheaded, but for 16 years it was a very, very traumatic time for the village, and so beware when you go to Tinjan. Number 13, they have the noisiest cranes I've ever heard of. If you go to Pula, one of the things that dominates the skyline are a bunch of cranes. And this used to be the shipyard of Uljanik, which sadly closed its doors a few years ago. But rather than just letting things die, there was a very, very innovative project called Lighting Giants. What they decided to do was to bring these cranes into the tourism offer. They used a lot of lighting and so on from a guy called Dejan Škira with music. And so with the music and all the different lighting that came onto these things, it became known as Lighting Giants. And I went for the opening about 8-9 years ago, and it was just a magical thing. These cranes were almost dancing. This is one of the things of Pula tourism you see, is they have this wonderful festival Visualia every year, where they really bring 3D mapping and so on into the city, and it really brings all this heritage to life. It's a fantastic, fantastic combination. Number 14, a little bit following on from that, they really don't know how to organise normal events. The Pula Arena is the 6th biggest Roman amphitheatre in the world, and when it was built in Roman times, I guess they never ever predicted that they would have events such as an ice hockey match, as a football match, concerts including people like, I don't know, Sting and Leonard Cohen. This is a region where they really, really combine the heritage of what they have and the modern tourism offer in such a way that it really showcases the heritage superbly. There was a wonderful festival, Outlook Festival, for many years, and these guys took over Forza Punta Cristo, which was a derelict fortress complex, and they cleaned it up and they put on this amazing festival, and people would go out there and they would see this incredible heritage just being used with music. It was a sensational thing, and Pula and Istria in general, they have a really, really innovative approach to how to use heritage with modern day tourism and concerts and so on. It's fantastic. Number 15, if you try the olive oil when you come to Istria, you'll be lost forever. This is a region which is a world champion. Back in 2005, only 18 years ago, the first ever Istrian olive producer, Claudio Ipscha, was awarded a place in the Flos Olei, the Michelin Guide of olive oils. 18 years later, Istria is consistently known as the #1 region in the world for its olive oil. This year, 56 out of the top 500 in the world came from Istria, more than 10%. So try this liquid gold at your peril. because unless you take your Istrian oil back home, you're going to be constantly disappointed in life. Number 16, you have the weirdest animals in really unlikely places. If you go to the Briuni Islands, which is just off Fajana on the mainland, this is a place which has zebras, Shetland ponies, there's an elephant, all roaming around peacefully. And the reason is that during the time of Tito thought Briuni was the most beautiful place in the world, and so he had his power base there. He was there basically half of the time, and he used to receive world leaders there. More than 60 world leaders came to visit Tito. There's an incredible photo exhibition there of Yasser Arafat and Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein and people like that used to come from the non-aligned movement. The tradition was that you would bring an indigenous animal from your country. So Queen Elizabeth came with some Shetland ponies. Indira Gandhi in 1984 came with a couple of elephants. One of them died, and so now there's only one left. And you can walk around, and it's really an exotic zoo. A lot of the animals didn't survive, and so Tito then had them stuffed. So you can see these very bizarre things with things like a stuffed giraffe in the exhibition. Very unusual. Number 17, they make Rakija from anything. I was in Motovun last week. I went into this shop called Aura, which is from Buzet, and they make a lot of different Rakijas and so on. There was just literally something from anything. They even had gin with white truffles, for example, if that's your thing. My personal favourite is biska, which is mistletoe. This is something that's produced a lot in Istria. Don't be too afraid, but do try, but don't overdrink because it's dangerous. Number 18, they have the weirdest soup I've ever tried. It's called Istaska supa. And this is a mixture of toasted bread, olive oil, salt, pepper, sugar, and Teran wine. And they put it into a jug. Pre-COVID, they used to pass it around a table and you drink from the jug till it was finished. And now we have it in our in individual glasses. It's probably the most unusual use of Croatian wine I've come across. And I've come across some really strange things so far. Some of the locals really drive like crazy. There are many famous sons coming from Istria, and one of the ones that I was a bit surprised to hear about was Italian racing legend Mario Andretti, who was actually born in Motovun. And you can actually see his birthhouse, which is in need of renovation, just from the top of the thing. You can look down, he's there. But he's a famous son. He came back a few years ago to visit his childhood place. There was a documentary, but there we go, some interesting people coming from Istria. Number 20, wherever you go, there could be a giant looking over you. There's a lot of legends about the giants in Istria, and these are the guys that used to live below the hilltop towns, and they did all the heavy work, and they built all the hilltop towns. And there was one called Veli Jose from Motovun. He managed to get to Venice, and he learned a lot about freedom. So when he came back, he managed to escape, and he's living somewhere in the hills. If you go to Motovun, you'll see a mural of Veli Jose, and perhaps he's there looking over you. So tell the kids to look out and see what they can see. Number 21, the trains are so slow that people have started biking. One of the best things in Istria in terms of activity is the Paranzana Trail. This is built on what was a wonderful train route, taking in 33 different settlements in inland Istria. And it was built in 1902, and it only lasted for about 33 years or so. After that, it fell into disrepair, then it became a bus route, and then finally it was converted into tourism for a hiking and mountain bike route. And there are viaducts, there are tunnels, there are spectacular views, and if you're an outdoor person, this is something that you absolutely must try to really understand the magic of Istria. Number 22, this is a region where the school children come back to school after 33 years. One of the most interesting things I've seen in my time in Istria was a place called Stara Škola, which means old school. And I was at a wine tasting at Klaj in Krasica. I was told that we were going for dinner at this Stara Škola at the old school, and I thought nothing more of it really. Then they took me into this really world-class restaurant. And the story was that the school in the village closed 33 years ago. Back in the 90s, the only tourism really was on the coast. And recently, this has been taken over by the owners of the Klaj winery. So they've completely transformed this school into a restaurant. They've had a very famous Canadian-Swiss chef who's now running the place. They've expanded it. They've kept the schoolroom as it was, but now instead of desks, they've got dining tables. They've got wonderful terraces. They have a zero waste policy on food, so whatever they get, they use everything. So the menu is very innovative. And the nicest part of the story for me is that the pupils who were there 33 years ago are now the ones who are producing the fruit and the vegetables that are being bought by the restaurant to be served. And the janitor who used to look after the place is now working again 33 years later, and he's cleaning the garden and stuff like that. So this is a really nice sustainable tourism pocket of Istria, and you find many, many examples of this inland. Number 23, they can build towns quicker than you. The youngest town in Istria is called Rakija. This was built in 1936, and it only took 547 days to build. Think about that, a whole town in 547 days. This is a coal mining town. It was built by the Italians to provide housing for all the coal miners working in the local mine. The youngest town, 547 days. Pretty good. Number 24, they combine art with coal mining. One of the biggest surprises for me going to Istria was the town of Labin, which is a beautiful hilltop village, but with loads of traditional narrow streets. It has art all over the place. It's a very, very arty place. You have murals of the famous people all over the town. But underneath, this was used as one of the main mines, and so right underneath the town there was a lot of mining, and you can actually go there into a mock mine and see how life was there. Great example of seeing a beautiful place, appreciating the art, and then seeing the darker side down there. And the final thing about why you should never visit Istria is because they really think they have the best wine in the world. This is a region that has very few wine varieties. They have Malvasia, which is the white. They have Teran, which is the main red, Rafoshko red, and Momenski Moshkat for the white in certain areas, but only 5 producers. But it's very, very hard to find a non-Istrian wine because they are very, very passionate about promoting their region and their product. It's only in 1994 that the first quality commercial wine was produced in Istria. And in 1997, Kozlovic Malvasia White got its first medal nationally. And now it's regarded as one of the premier wine regions in the region. 30 years ago, they weren't known for olive oil, truffles, or wine. And today, they are regarded as regional champions in all 3. Quite a small region, and they've realized they can't compete on quantity, so they're really going to try and compete on quality, and they're succeeding. And the most interesting thing I found in Istria during my visit was that tourism used to be on the coast, and now they've built this gourmet story in inland Istria of wine, truffles, 5-star hotels, olive oil. There are now really nice boutique hotels, and there's a lot of content going on throughout the year inland. And the statistic that really blew me away, that the Istrian Tourist Board told me, was that the average room rate on the coast is 85 euros a night, and the season is about 90 days on average. And the average room rate inland, where there was nothing 30 years ago, is 290 euros a night, and the season is 120 days. Fantastic place. It's very diverse. You've got nature, activities, culture, sea. It's really, really, really outstanding, and I heartily, heartily recommend you check it out.